Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
And guys, we're back together for the first time in almost a month, I think, right? The brothers Ginsburg have not ditched me this week.
Right, we're both here.
Yep, that's a fact.
I just gave a little head wiggle. I didn't know what to say.
That's okay. It's good. We're back. Although Eli and I had a good time last week without you, Jesse. We went a little long chatting about the, specifics of sticky stuff, but it was fun.
I thought you both sounded good. I like the podcast. I listened to it, and
yeah. Okay, you listened to it, but then you seemed like you didn't listen to it when we tested you on it.
No, I did. I listened to the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. So. All right. Well, good. And you also did you go to a couple games? Your first games this week, Jesse?
I did. Yeah. Which I know a little while ago I was
skeptical about it.
Yeah, exactly. Not sure I was going to go, but I was kind of more or less forced into it. So, which is fine. But I had a really good time. We were separated from other people. We had plenty of space. I never felt like I was in danger. I am vaccinated, so so it was really fun despite the excruciating loss to the Blue Jays. And well, they were both really excruciating losses.
They were both against the Blue Jays?
No, so I went to the one against the Blue Jays where Paul Fry blew the game in the ninth inning, where Bo Bichette, we're going to get into that. Bo Bichette hit the game tying hit, and then the Orioles inexplicably did not walk Vlad Guerrero when the go-ahead run was on third base with first and third and 2 outs. Second base was available, and they chose to pitch to Vlad Guerrero, and he hit a double the first pitch. I'm a little upset about it still. So
he hasn't been able to talk about anything else since.
Yeah, and then I went to the game where Jorge Lopez pitched pretty well, and the Orioles lost 3-1. He kind of got unfortunate because he got the loss, but the go-ahead run was on an infield hit, and he was very unlucky that game. But I was actually, the thing about that game was we only lost 3-1. It was to the Astros, and I was kind of more happy that Lopez pitched well than I was disappointed we lost the game. Right. I mean, we're kind of at that point where
just kind of generally we usually lose by worse. So
yeah, and we have this week we have.
Right. So I'll take a good starting pitching performance and a loss. At this point, I can accept that.
Yeah, the Orioles are now, I think, on pace for 51 wins this year, which is rough.
And it's a little,
really bad.
I was just gonna say it's a little different than what we had all predicted.
Well, even like a couple weeks ago, I think they were on pace for like 66 or something, and it's just completely nosedived. It's very disappointing. But I'm glad you went to games.
Yeah, definitely. It was fun. And every week we get on here, we report that we had one win this week. We didn't win this week. We won one game this week, so that's how it feels.
Yeah, that's June started off so well, and they've won, I think, one game since like the 5-1 start or something. So it's pretty rough, but baseball's fun still when you're losing. I still have to get to a game this year. We'll probably get there, I'm thinking, in August, but we'll see.
And are you intentionally delaying for COVID reasons?
No.
Or why are you waiting till August?
Just because we've got the baby and my wife works nights, and it's just one of those things where it's like the one night of the week where we both like sync up being home. It's like, do you really feel like going downtown, lugging the baby down there? It's just not currently in the cards, but we will get there.
Makes sense.
Yes. Okay. Well, you guys want to talk a little Orioles baseball maybe on this podcast here?
Let's do it.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Count me in.
It's not the most cheerful thing to talk about, but we can.
We owe it. We owe it to the people that dutifully listen to us each week. We appreciate it.
Yes.
So as Jesse just mentioned, the Orioles went 1-5 this week. They went 1-2 against the Blue Jays, and they got swept by the streaking Houston Astros. So that's kind of a bummer. I don't know if you guys have anything to add there. We've got some silver linings we're going to talk about in a little bit, but I think maybe what's more helpful is if we talk about some specific bits of news that happened this week. So on June 18th, we had a couple things, sort of a flurry of things. Bruce Zimmerman, one of the Orioles' most consistent pitchers this year, headed to the 10-day injured list with bicep tendonitis. Brandon Hyde actually, I think, spoke about that again yesterday or the day before. And they said he's going to be out at least 2 or 3 weeks from then. So it's going to be a bit without Bruce Zimmerman. That same day, Chance Sisco, longtime catching prospect and, future, I don't know what he's going to be. He was DFA'd and the Orioles selected the contract of Thomas Eshelman. So a lot of stuff there, but I think the big standout piece there is that Chance Sisco was designated for assignment. This is a guy that was a top 100 prospect, sort of viewed as the catcher of the future for the Orioles prior to Adley Rutschman coming into the fold a couple of years ago. Got on the big league stage, struggled defensively, never really hit the way they expected him to. So I don't know, Eli, maybe I'll go to you first. What were sort of your thoughts about Chance Sisco being DFA? Did you think this was the time to pull the trigger on that type of a move?
Yeah, definitely. We had a bunch of conversations about the catching situation in Baltimore, and I think we all kind of came to the consensus that just something needed to be done. We needed to find a way to get Austin Wynns into the rotation, somebody that could provide some stability behind the plate. And Cisco had just been downright awful. We talk about Severino's struggles behind the dish. At least he's hitting. Cisco is like the 28th worst catcher in the MLB, as opposed to Severino being the 35th worst behind defensively, that is. And Severino is still providing some value with the bat, albeit not much. So yeah, Cisco got the boot. I think another thing about this is Cisco next year is out of options as of next spring. So he does not provide much in the way of roster flexibility. He does not provide much in any way, shape, or form. So we got rid of him.
Yeah, clears out that 40-man roster spot, currently taken up by Thomas Eshelman. Jesse, I don't know if you want to touch on Cisco at all. Obviously, he had his, as Eli kind of pointed out, had his deficiencies, but, was kind of considered one of those guys that still had a modest ceiling for a while there. But were you ready to move on from Chance Sisco?
Yeah, it got to that point where I feel like the Orioles' hand was basically forced, and they just ran out of patience with him. I mean, there were different moments in his career with the Orioles where there were some very small tidbits of encouragement, but overall it's been a frustrating I'm sure it's been frustrating for him, it's been frustrating for the Orioles, and it just never seemed to work out. And I mean, it's basically time. So he it's interesting because he's as we know, he's not very good defensively, but offensively there are things that I used to like about him, right? I mean, he had a tremendous walk rate. I remember we had a conversation one time about the potential of him leading off in the lineup, right? So there were a lot of interesting things about him from an offensive perspective, but he's not even doing anything offensively. So I mean, now it just makes no sense. He's been trending in the wrong direction for a long time, and it doesn't seem like it's going to turn around. So
yeah, he's a career 199 hitter. Like you guys said, he walks a bunch, so his career OBP is 120 points higher at 319, but then he's slugging under 340 for his career. So just sure, he's got a good approach at the plate, we'll give him that, but he just cannot do any damage with the bat. And so far this year, his OPS has been 431. It is 77% worse than league average. So the average major league player is worth about 5 of him in the lineup.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that's interesting because he's a player that the scouting report on him for a long time in the minors was pretty consistent. Like, needs work behind the plate, has good bat to ball skills, doesn't have a ton of power. And we saw 2 of those things transpire in the major league level. He's needed work behind the plate and he didn't have a ton of power, but the bat to ball skills, that I don't know, that never happened. He struck out a ton with no power. It was very frustrating. And, as a catcher, he doesn't have to hit a ton. That's fine, but you need to be playing really good defense. And he did not provide that. Pedro Severino's had his issues, but you would still prefer to have him, and Austin Wynns is perfectly serviceable back there. And, we all know what's going on here. Adley Rutschman is going to be up probably sometime next year, I would imagine. And once he comes up, he's not going anywhere. That's going to be his job for the foreseeable future. So, you got to get some roster flexibility, and Chance Sisco, as you pointed out, Eli, doesn't really give the Orioles that pass this season. So I understand the move. The move to bring up Eshelman is a little bit interesting. He's a guy that doesn't throw especially hard. He's sort of another retread, sort of the pitching version of Stevie Wilkerson. Kind of why is he here? So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the Eshelman edition.
I don't know. The only thing I wanted to say about Eshelman is that Eshelman is the exact type of person that progress in a rebuild means you leave behind.
Right.
Eshelman is the type of guy that does not belong on a major league team. And unfortunately, he is a part of the Orioles, and it's a indictment of the state of the Orioles starting rotation. It's just tragic.
Well, yeah, he's probably not even like the 26th guy on the roster. Like I would probably put him a couple pegs above a few other guys we might talk about a little bit later. Right. So, Jesse, any thoughts on Eshelman?
Not much more than what Eli said. Yeah, I mean, it's there's not much that the Orioles are gaining as an organization by having him on the team. It's frustrating. And I say that because, part of the whole purpose of this year for the Orioles is to let a lot of the young guys demonstrate their abilities to perform, etc., with them being complemented by more kind of durable veterans that we can more or less rely upon. And Eshelman isn't going to be this durable veteran for us that is going to be able to pitch consistently or routinely. And we're not learning anything. He's not going to be on the next good Orioles team. So it's really like having someone like Eshelman on the team. It's really the Orioles just trying to kill innings, and
right.
And that's basically it. And that's what's frustrating from like a fan's perspective is, okay, we're putting guys out here. The Orioles are not learning anything from these guys, and it's just to try to relieve some stress on the pitching staff. That's the only purpose. And I guess the one other thing, I don't know, are we getting back to Zimmerman?
Yeah, you can talk about it. I mean, I think the Eshelman move pairs well with the Zimmerman IL stint. I think they're directly related.
Right. So the thing about Zimmerman, which is very frustrating from the Orioles' perspective too, I mean, at this point, he was basically the stopper for the Orioles. I mean, if we had like a skid, we would have wanted to be sending Zimmerman out there because he would probably give us 5 or 6 innings of 1 or 2 run ball. And we have a couple guys, Lopez isn't really capable of 5 or 6 innings, but Kramer is capable of 5 or 6 innings of 1 or 2
I disagree with both.
I think Kramer Lopez might be more capable than Kramer personally.
Well, I don't know. Kramer I feel like has done that multiple times this year, and Lopez went 6 1/3 the other night for the first time all season.
Right.
So, in any case, yeah. So, I mean, my point wasn't to debate how capable or incapable those guys are, but if anybody is capable, those are the only 2 guys capable aside from Zimmerman. So he was really kind of the stopper for this beleaguered rotation, and he's now not available. So
right. I mean, that's why it's kind of related to the Eshelman news, though. Eshelman does have a couple of minor league options, so you put him on the 40-man, he can bounce up and down, and like you said, he's not going to be that big time arm. He only strikes out about 4 guys every 9 innings, which is in today's day and age of baseball is incredibly
Atrocious.
low. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Zimmerman news is not good, and him being out 2 or 3 weeks is a problem, paired with what we learned earlier today that John Means is going to be out past the All-Star game. So the Orioles pitching staff is in a bit of a predicament. That got a little bit worse on June 21st. It was announced that Cesar Valdez was going on the 10-day IL with a lower back strain, and the Orioles recalled Travis Lakins Sr. from AAA Norfolk. Valdez has definitely had his issues and has not been being used as often by Brandon Hyde, as he kind of tries to hide him and tiptoe around certain elements of the bullpen. But Jesse, maybe I'll go to you about Valdez. I'm not sure what your thoughts are. Do you do you think that maybe this back injury has kind of led to some of his issues, or is this just sort of one of those old like Buck Showalter era Ubaldo Jimenez tripping in the parking lot type of IL stints?
Well, that's really the question. I'm inclined to say that he was pitching poorly, and that's why he got put on the IL, was basically because he's been pitching poorly. It is possible. I mean, who knows, right? It is possible there was something bothering him that had some influence. I mean, I guess my thing is, I feel like if something was wrong with him, he would have probably been placed on the IL earlier. If we want to talk about, if we're connecting it to his poor pitching performance, my guess is any injury he would have had, they would have put him on the shelf earlier in the season, when he was pitching really badly, right? The fact that he was pitching really badly, and now weeks later he's going on the IL. That kind of makes me think he's more. That kind of makes me think that it's more about trying to give him some sort of a break in the season and trying to let him figure some stuff out without any pressure of coming into games. And I'm sure there is a little something wrong with him. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the Orioles are completely lying about this, but I'm doubtful that it's really been connected to his pitching.
Yeah, he's pitched 5 times in June, and he's given up earned runs in 4 of those 5 appearances. His ERA has gone from 5.03 to 5.74 in the month. He's got a 7.71 ERA in the month. So, yeah, he's not pitching particularly well. He's out of options. Like, it all kinds of adds up to a bit of an interesting situation there. I don't know, Eli, if you have anything to add on Cesar Valdez and sort of what this injury means for the Orioles bullpen and maybe his future with the Orioles.
Yeah, I really don't have too much to add. He's clearly been struggling. It was kind of gimmicky, like
right.
his whole thing is a gimmick. And the dead fish, as fun as it is, no one can really be super surprised that the league has started to figure it out. So we've had this conversation on here before. He's got to figure something out. Kind of needs to figure out what he can do to be something more two-dimensional than just a one pitch throwing changeup 76 to 78, 70% of the time. That being said, what this is kind of indicative to me, what it's indicative of to me, seeing the Zimmerman and the Valdez injury in conjunction and more injuries across the league, we're already at a point where we are deeper into this season than we got all of last season through the 60 games. So, I think that it goes without saying that our staff is going to start getting tired. The bullpen is going to be particularly tired because of the garbage in our starting rotation. So I think we're going to start seeing these injuries more and more. And I think that that's what makes Zimmerman hurt even more. As Jess talked about, he's one of the only reliable pieces in our starting rotation. He might have been the only one with Means out. So I think that it's going to be interesting to watch. The Orioles are going to need to rely on the likes of Thomas Eshelman to get them through the season as these injuries start popping up, as things start happening, and we continue to be bad.
Yeah, and I think this next move we're going to talk about is sort of indicative of that as well. The Orioles have given up on one of their Rule 5 picks. Max Scherzer has been designated for assignment. His future has not been dictated just yet. He could stick with the Orioles, but he'll need to be offered back to the Reds first. Scherzer only pitched in 5 games for the Orioles. He had a long IL stint in the middle of his stay. He allowed 12 earned runs in 7 2/3 innings, gave up 15 hits, struck out 11, walked 7. Clearly had some issues. So it's not super surprising, but so let's talk on that first, and then we'll kind of get into the move that sort of came in conjunction with it. Scherzer has been designated. Jesse, do you think the Orioles gave Scherzer enough of a shot to prove he could handle it? And, whatever, depending on what you think there, do you think it was the right decision to designate him for assignment?
I do think it was the right decision. As far as whether he got a shot or not, I I mean, I don't feel like he was really not given a shot. I don't feel like he was treated unfairly exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Orioles are in a really, really bad situation right now. And they need to find answers, and they can't keep guys in the bullpen who are giant question marks like him at this point in the season. And they need to find a way to fill innings, and if that means shuffling through guys, I think that's what has to happen at this point. So, I mean, yes, was he put in a position where he was able to succeed and show his full ability? If he was on the Rays right now instead of the Orioles, I'm sure he would have done much, much better. You know, so much of pitching is about the environment, the context that you're pitching in. You know, all of that stuff has to do with it. And of course, this Orioles team is not providing players a good context, right, to pitch and to perform in. But the reason the Orioles aren't providing him a good context is because at this point the Orioles aren't capable of providing a pitcher a good context, not because they didn't want to necessarily or they didn't try to. I think they did try to make accommodations for him for a while when he was struggling. They shelved him, they hid him in the bullpen. I think the Orioles did what they could. It's an unfortunate situation, I think, from both perspectives, because I'm sure the Orioles would want to keep him in the organization. It's just things are so desperate with the pitching staff at the major league level that they just had to make a move.
Yeah. Eli, do you have similar thoughts? Were you ready to see Scruller exit Baltimore?
Yeah. I guess I would like to keep him around. I think what everything Jesse said is entirely correct. The Orioles are not in a position where we can be playing games like this, and keep somebody around just for the sake of, potential success. He clearly, has a good thing in his splitter. I think that's a really effective pitch. He clearly has a solid mix. We were all super impressed, and we talked about it on this pod when he came in, immediately struck out Aaron Judge with the bases loaded. He showed some glimpses, and I think he's a talented dude, and I think he'll definitely have a spot in the bigs for a couple years. That being said, yeah, the Orioles just don't have time to be playing these games, and we don't have time for him to figure it out. So get somebody else in there. We were all pretty entertained by who it was, so I guess kick it back to you, Tyler, to get going with that.
Yeah. Let's talk about him. The knuckleballer Mickey Jannis is now a Major League Baseball player. We're recording this on Thursday, the 24th. Jannis made his Major League debut yesterday on the 23rd. It didn't go particularly well, but I don't know. It's kind of fun to have a knuckleballer in the big leagues. There hasn't really been one that I can recall since R.A. Dickey was in the big leagues a couple years ago and was really, really good, won a Cy Young. So, I mean, Eli, are you excited to have a knuckleball pitcher on the Orioles staff?
Yeah, I'm very excited. He is the first knuckleballer in the league this year. He did not throw the first knuckleball this year. Danny Mendick, a position player,
Nice.
threw 12 knuckleballs in some mop-up performance earlier. But we saw him strike out Yordan Alvarez with a knuckleball. We all talk about spin rates. A knuckleball that rotated at, I think it was 189 RPM, which is less than a tenth of the absolute worst pitches. So, it's just kind of cool to see. I think that it's a cool story because he is 33 years old. He was drafted in 2010, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I don't know. He's been grinding for years and years and years and finally gets this shot. And he did get lit up, but it was just a cool story. You got to love it. And the Orioles need little things to cheer for, and he's definitely it.
Yeah, I think I saw Jannis was drafted 11 years and 1 day from when he made his Major League debut. Yeah. Like, that's how long it took. So it's commendable. Jesse, what are your thoughts on Jannis joining the O's?
No, there definitely is an exciting aspect to the story. As far as having a knuckleballer on the team, I think in order to be an effective knuckleballer, you have to be a very, very good knuckleballer, right? There's a very big reason why a lot of knuckleballers don't work out. And if you don't have a knuckleball on a given day, if the knuckleball isn't dancing, if the knuckleball has no movement, well, you are like Jannis was the other day. You're gonna get hit, and you're gonna get hit hard too. I actually, even though he was one of the more effective knuckleballers, I used to be excited when the Orioles would hit against Tim Wakefield when he was with the Red Sox, because there was always the potential that the ball would just fly out of the park that day and the Orioles would make good contact with them. With the knuckleball, I remember this one expression someone always had about the knuckleball was, if it's high, let it fly. If it's low, let it go. Right. And that's kind of the thing. So, but no, the thing is, I'm always excited to see different types of pitchers, right? I always enjoy kind of seeing knuckleballers, like with Cesar Valdez, the dead fish. I like guys that are kind of when position players get on the mound and they have to try to figure out a way to get guys out when they're not major league pitchers. These kinds of things are very fascinating for me to watch. So seeing a knuckleballer on the mound is definitely, from a kind of theoretical perspective, it's trying to be innovative in trying to figure out ways to get hitters out. And I think that's really, really interesting. And a lot of times some of these guys are forced to try to figure out new ways to get people out because they're not capable of getting people out in the traditional way. They don't have a 98-mile-an-hour fastball and they don't have the livest arm or whatever. So they have to resort to these sorts of tactics. But I'm always excited to see something like this. And if you can be effective, it's really nice to have something like this available to you in the bullpen, right? Because you have a guy that is just a completely different look for the hitters, and they're going to be kind of bewildered when they come up to the plate and have to face a pitcher like this. So, of course, like I said, it's very hard to be an effective knuckleballer. I am not necessarily confident that Jannis will be an effective knuckleballer in the major leagues. And that's mainly based on, like you said, it's taken him 11 years to get here. And the main reason I would say he's on the team is because the Orioles are so thin right now and desperate for any sort of pitcher. But nonetheless, it's kind of a cool story. I'm happy for him. And, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of part of a trend this week of the Orioles have sort of said, the pitching is in a rough spot. We're not ready to call up any of the prospects really for full-time duty. Even a guy like Zach Lothar or Alex Wells, they've kind of made a decision. We're going to let those guys marinate a little bit, but we need to create some flexibility for the pitching staff. So, all right, let's make room for Eshelman. Let's make room for Jannis. These are two guys that not to say they don't care about them, but they're a little more expendable. You can kind of throw them into the fire and see how it goes. The Jannis stuff, I think it is exciting. I didn't get a chance to watch him yesterday, but yeah, it's kind of cool to have a knuckleballer. As you said, Jesse, there's a reason there's not a lot of knuckleballers. One, yeah, it's hard to be a good one, but even the good ones tend to get hit around a lot. Like Tim Wakefield is stuck in the league for 20 years, but like you said, sometimes it was just home run derby against him. So we'll see about Jannis. He's got a couple options, so I think he's probably going to be a pitcher you'll see bounce up and down a little bit this year and might stick around in next year too. So, could be a name we get a little bit familiar with and comfortable with over the next season or two. So pretty cool.
I just want to throw out, Jesse said he didn't watch him. I don't know if you did, Tyler, but he was getting rocked. And I looked up exit velocities while you guys were chatting. Carlos Correa hit 198 miles an hour, Miles Straw 100.5, Martin Maldonado 105.9, Yordan Alvarez 112, Carlos Correa 111.9, Abraham Toro 105.7, Chaz McCormick 105.5, Kyle Tucker 102.6.
These are radio stations you're listening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is like the entire lineup, basically.
The entire lineup hit something like in the dark red section of Baseball Savant. And he was getting absolutely lit up. Yeah.
And Maldonado is their catcher, and he's great, but he's hitting like 100 this season.
Yeah, not a good
He's
hitter.
not somebody who should be hitting the
Yeah.
ball 106 miles an hour off of you.
Right.
And nobody named Chas McCormick should ever hit a home run, period.
Yeah.
So that's that whole statement.
Chaz McCormick. That's a TV character. He's like the best friend of the main character in a movie. Or
Right.
Chaz McCormick. Yeah, I mean, look, he's 5'9". He throws knuckleballs. He's 33 years old. You know, Mickey Jannis it's against the odds. He was a 44th round draft pick. Like, the fact he even got here is pretty darn cool. And every day he spends in the big leagues is a good day. So we're rooting for him.
I still love him. I'm glad he's here. Don't get me wrong. I just thought it was worth mentioning.
The thing I would
sure.
say,
He got rocked.
the thing I would say, Tyler, about what you said is, I mean, for one, I'm glad that the Orioles don't have these young guys up, because I don't want them getting overexposed like they would undoubtedly be overexposed if they were up at the major league level. So I'm glad the Orioles are protecting them. But I will say, I mean, you kind of said that the Orioles, you don't want to say the Orioles don't care about these pitchers, but they kind of don't care about these pitchers. That's kind of why they are up at the major league level and kind of taking the bullet for the team, basically.
All right, let's move on to talking about the hitters who are doing poorly instead of the pitchers. Let's add some diversity to the broadcast today. Anthony Santander, he was really good last year in 37 games, had an oblique injury end his season last year. This year he's had ankle issues, and you know, we were all kind of texting and just sort of not realize, but just were like coming to the realization that, hey, Santander's had a really bad season so far. As we record, he's batting .238 with a .269 on base and a 384 slugging percentage. He has just 4 home runs. He's clearly struggling with his ankle. He's not really moving around the outfield too well. As Jesse had mentioned earlier, there was that bloop fly ball into right field that he did not get to inexplicably. Based on Baseball Savant's information, it had an expected batting average of only 180, and yet he could not make the catch. So I don't know what you guys think about Santander. What is going on with him? Is it really the ankle? Is it something more? Eli, what are your kind of thoughts and observations on Santander's struggles to this point?
Yeah, I still have a lot of faith in Anthony Santander. I think that, you know, the dude is 26 years old. So I think that passing any kind of judgment, particularly when we did see the success that he had with the bat last year, you know, his overall batted ball profile, he has a lot of barrels. He has got pretty good exit velos. He lifts the ball well. His on base skills have never been all that great, but it's just a pretty good, legitimate power bat when he's at his best. So, you know, by no means are we needing to sound the alarm on him. I think that he's a guy who is chronically injured. I made the joke before the podcast with you guys, but if we just have like him and Austin Hayes, and we can just kind of throughout the year meld them into one person, you know, Hayes hits the IL, Anthony Santander comes back, Santander hits the IL, Hayes comes back. We could have one really good corner outfielder, and that would be beautiful. Unfortunately, they spend most of their time hurt at the same time, so it doesn't help anything. But I think that Santander is a really talented dude. I think the Orioles need to stay with him and continue to explore what he can provide to us, because I think it's a lot of good stuff. That being said, we do need to figure out what we can do to manage his load a little bit. I'm a little bit concerned because it has been just about every year. The reason we were able to get him in the Rule 5 draft and push him through as like a 21-year-old was because he was hurt for most of that year. You know, we didn't need to keep him on the roster because he was always on the IL. So it was easy to, you know, not have to DFA him, even though he was not ready for the major leagues. And ever since then, he's never looked back. He's been hurt all the time. He's shown a lot of good flashes. But clearly right now, you know, you alluded to the little bloop by Bichette that, you know, tied up the game in that ridiculous 6-run ninth inning that lost us the game. He's not moving around well. He's not hitting well. You know, any good hitter can tell you your power, your balance, pretty much the entire foundation of your swing, is driven up through your legs into your core. And if you don't have that foundation, if you're tender on one leg, at his ankle, as he's rotating through, there's just no way to really be effective with that. So, to me, I'd love to see him go back to the IL. I'd love to see him just take the time to get right. I'd love the Orioles to just be patient with him. He's a competitor. I'm sure he's trying to work. One of you guys brought up his arbitration status at the end of the year. He's going to hit arbitration, and obviously he wants what payday he can get, and so he wants to pad his stats. But right now, he's just not performing, and I think it's only doing more damage than it's doing good.
Yeah, I wrote about this actually for Camden Chat this week, so I was able to kind of dive into Santander's numbers a bit. So these numbers are probably a bit dated because I wrote this on Monday and we're recording on Thursday. But basically, I looked at 2019, 2020, and 2021. And what has kind of happened with a lot of his numbers is he sort of looks a lot like he did in 2019 rather than 2020. So his launch angle this year is 13.5. Last year was 24.8, and in 2019 it was 15.3. So he's hitting the ball on the ground more often, and that's kind of supported by his ground ball rate, which this year is 39.7%. Last year it was 23.6%, and in 2019 it was 39.2%. So again, more ground balls just like in 2019. And then he's gone to the opposite field 21.3% of the time this year. That's down from 32% last year. And then in 2019, he was going opposite field 23.8%. So sort of what I've deduced from there is that the injury it's easy when you're hurt to compensate for it and kind of just to fall back into bad habits or whatever. And clearly he seemed to figure something out last year. And this year, because he's hurt, he's compensating. He's kind of just defaulting to what's easier rather than what's proper for him to be successful is kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm of the same mind as you, Eli, like send him to the IL. We could have Ryan McKenna play every day. You could maybe put DJ Stewart out there, although that's an adventure in itself. But yeah, I think Santander, if you view him as an important piece of the near future, you need to get him right. And you need to, again, sort of the same thing they're doing with the pitchers where they're, Eshelman and Jannis, who cares, and quote unquote about those guys. Let's get Zach Lothar and Alex Wells right. Let's get Santander right and let, a DJ Stewart kind of take the lumps in the outfield. Jesse, what's your read on the Santander situation?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the injury is prevalent and is affecting him. I think it's most clearly demonstrated, as you guys were talking about, in the power numbers. The fact that the power is down means that is clearly connected to his ankle hurting him, and like Eli was explaining, not being able to get the power through the legs that is necessary to hit the ball for home runs. So yeah, I mean, I think it's concerning because it's pretty alarming the Orioles haven't put him on the IL yet because it's so obvious that something is wrong. And yeah, I don't know why they haven't just, like you said, called up Ryan McKenna or had somebody else fill the spot, whether it's Hayes when he's healthy or whatever. So I don't know what is going on, and I don't know why the Orioles are doing that, but clearly, like you were saying, Tyler, something is this injury seems to be affecting his play. And yeah, and I think it's also easier to just sort of slap the ball and try to hit the ball in that kind of way. The thing is, even if you are just struggling, a power hitter will at least on occasion connect and hit the ball hard and far, right? And the fact that Santander isn't doing that at all, right? Really, that is kind of what the big indicator for me is, that he's just never connecting on a real solid home run or anything like that. So it kind of feels like he doesn't even have the ability at this point to hit the ball out, right? Or it's very, very difficult for him to. So that's why I think yeah, he needs to be a big priority, and the Orioles need to get him right, and that should be the Orioles' main focus. And I don't know why he's being pushed, because it's been a month or two of consistent bad play, and I don't know why the Orioles are slow to address this.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
go ahead, Eli. Sorry.
just real quick, like to Jesse's comment about the power numbers, he hit 2 home runs before he went on the IL in like the first week of the season, and then has 2 home runs since he came off of it in the last like month and a half. So yeah, it's clear that he just does not have the ability to generate power the way that he normally does. Yeah.
And I do think that the arbitration hearing looming, or the, not necessarily a hearing, but the arbitration situation looming could be potentially a big factor here. I mean, the Orioles, we've seen they're kind of adverse to paying guys too much right now, unless they're really confident in their future abilities. Like they paid Trey Mancini this past offseason. They did pay Santander, I think about $2 million coming off of a really good season last year. I said to you guys before, what do you think about the possibility of him being non-tendered? And you both kind of recoiled at that and do you think that's a little bit of a jump too far? I mean, I might be the only one thinking that, so this might not even be worth addressing, but Eli, you think that's a little bit of a bridge too far to think about Santander being non-tendered in the offseason?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. I think that there's a lot of interest for him on the trade market. And so at the absolute minimum, non-tendering somebody doesn't get you anything for it.
Right.
Like once you've non-tendered someone, like we had Jonathan VR and we non-tendered him, and we got, one minor league pitcher who was fine, but Jonathan VR was a borderline all-star that year for us. So, and at a relatively cheap price, I think it was like $9-10 million. So, he's a couple WAR player, and we got a pretty minor prospect for him. Mm-hmm. So, if we were to non-tender Santander, that's an admission that we don't consider this guy a factor in anything, and we lose any bargaining power that we had. So, we had talked about, I think it was the White Sox that had interest in Santander over the offseason. There are multiple clubs, I think, that would love to have a 26-year-old who's shown, like I think he slugged 560 last year or something crazy like that, who's shown the ability to just drive the ball, even if it is for short spurts, and hope that they can keep him healthy, hope that they can get him a little more consistent. So, you could make the argument for trading him so that we don't have to deal with the headache, and we definitely do have some corner outfield prospects, a la Yusniel Diaz. So, yeah, I don't see the non-tender angle quite so much. I do think that Santander has a lot of value to somebody, and as long as he has value to somebody, he has value to us as a team that is rebuilding.
Fair enough. Jesse, anything else additional to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Eli said. I just think that, yeah, he's too valuable a person to be non-tendered. Usually guys that are non-tendered, that their ceiling is pretty clear. And Santander's ceiling is not really clear at all. He could be a really, really good player. He demonstrated last year that that he has that potential. So yeah, I don't think, right, even if the Orioles want to give up on him, they would give up on him by trading him, not by non-tendering him.
Okay, fair enough. Hopefully he gets better. I think an IL stint would be the best bet too. So we'll see. We will see what happens. So somebody that I think the Orioles Twitter is starting to get a little bit, there's a groundswell going on. I think Eli and you and I talked about this last week, but Jamai Jones is kind of crushing it down in Norfolk still. He's reached base in 20 of the 21 games he's played this year. He did have a little bit of a stint on the IL earlier in the year. He's got a 183 WRC plus, and that's made up of a 351 batting average, 449 on base, and a 662 slugging. And he's walking more often than he's striking out. The Orioles clearly have a need at second base, where currently Stevie Wilkerson and Pat Valaika are sort of trading starts here and there. So yeah, I kind of just ask you guys, Jesse, I'll ask you first. Why is Jamai Jones still in Norfolk?
Good question. No, I mean, I think it's pretty inexplicable. I mean, I guess the Orioles are trying to slow play it and give him a little more time or something like that. But I really have no idea why Jamai Jones is not up. He'd clearly be an upgrade for the roster, and at the expense of Stevie Wilkerson being on the major league team. I think that's something that I think is pretty much as close to a no-brainer as something can be like this. Um, I did end up going to see Mike Elias talk for a little bit, and he seemed to indicate that Jamai Jones would be up really soon. This was probably a little less than a week ago. But yeah, so I mean, I think most Oriole fans are waiting for this to happen, and I definitely am. Yeah, and I mean, this guy is clearly showing that he's dominating down there. I don't know how much more he has to gain or how much more he has to learn down at that level. And it seems like even for his career, his ability to improve and get better, he needs more of a challenge. And it seems like the Bigs would give him that challenge. So I don't know what the Orioles are waiting on. I'm ready for him.
Eli,
I'm right with you. Yeah, he's clearly hitting the ball extremely well. I was surprised Jesse didn't use the phrase, "We're not learning anything from Stevie Wilkerson." That's Jesse's go-to. We are not learning anything from Stevie Wilkerson. And, Pat Valleca's fine. Pat Valleca has shown he can handle the bat a little bit. Stevie Wilkerson is taking up playing time. He's not even fielding well. Like, sure, he's got versatility, but what does versatility actually give you when you're, you don't want to use the jack of all, or what is it? Jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah. So that's kind of Stevie Wilkerson right now. He's not mastering anything. He's actually quite struggling at just about everything he's doing. And I don't really understand the appeal of having him on the team. We have Jamai Jones. He's got, he's got a little bit of a pedigree. He has previously made it up to the majors last year with the Angels, albeit for a short time. He's spent some time in AAA. He's showing right now that he's capable of handling it and capable of excelling there. So why not give him a shot? We have the opportunity at the major league level. And I think that, I think it's time. We said it last week. We said that I predicted within the next 10 days after our last episode. So I guess I got 3 more days till I run out on that. But yeah, it just seems like it's time. And I can't think of a single reason why Jamai Jones is still in Norfolk.
The whole thing with minor league development is sort of, you want to get to the point where you make the determination, can this guy learn anything more at this level? And I think Jamai Jones, unless there's some defensive questions we're not aware of, which is entirely possible, I think we've kind of gotten to the point with Jones's bat, at least, that there's not much more he can prove at AAA. He's played in the big leagues. Let's see what he can do. And that's really all I've got to say. Well, Jamai Jones watch is on until he's in an Orioles uniform. All right, let's switch gears to something we discussed last week when you were out, Jess, the sticky substances in baseball. Feel free to add anything from the discussion last week if you'd care to, but I'll go to Eli first here because I know he's got some opinions on the whole situation. So this has been the first week of umpires checking pitchers. They're checking starters at least twice throughout their start, and they're checking relievers at least once. It's been a bit of a fiasco, although Rob Manfred said he thinks it's going very well. So Eli, I don't know, I'll just go to you for your reaction. Is this going very well in your opinion?
It is not going very well, Tyler. Let me tell you what. It was kind of predictable that this was going to be a rocky, rollout from the MLB. The infamous incident that has already happened was the Joe Girardi Max Scherzer incident. So, Scherzer has already been checked twice in the game. He's on a stretch of a couple, good innings. And Girardi asks, because he keeps running his hands through his hair, Girardi asks that they go check Max Scherzer again. So the umpires walk out to the mound in the middle of the inning. Scherzer gets pissed off. He throws his hat and his glove down, starts undoing his belt. For those who haven't actually seen one of these checks yet, those are the three things they check: hat, glove, and belt. So it kind of then comes into play where is a manager potentially doing this for gamesmanship? If he's in a situation where a pitcher starts getting on a roll, if Jacob deGrom has struck out 9 guys in a row, are you going to send the umpires out to go check him for something just as a means of interrupting his rhythm, throwing him off for a minute, making him step down? And, Scherzer was understandably extremely upset about it. And he's like, I've already been checked twice this game. When do you guys think I would have gone and put something new on? He, keeps running his hands through his hair. He says it was a pretty cool night and it was super dry. So the only kind of moisture he can actually get is from the sweat in his hair. And he said, I was licking my hands at the beginning, but I was tired of eating the rosin all over my hand. So, it's just this mess of a situation. It's clearly been, pitchers are expressing their displeasure with it. I don't think, everyone could argue, oh, well, they're the ones who were using the spider tack and all the sticky stuff, so that's why they're upset. I mean, they're upset with disrupting their rhythm. They're upset with disrupting, the habits that they have, the way they walk to the dugout, the way they walk back out to the mound. They're getting stopped after their warm-up pitches. It can happen at absolutely any time. And these pitchers are just having to adjust on the fly. We talked about injuries. There have been a couple more. We've talked about all sorts of stuff. And I'm still disappointed. If you want to hear my full thoughts on it, go listen to the last episode. But I did want to point out the fact and laugh at the fact that they checked Mickey Jannis twice. A guy who is explicitly trying to get as little spin on the ball as he physically can. They checked him twice throughout his outing. It's just ridiculous. I don't know. I'm over it. And we got to watch it the rest of the year, and I'm not excited for that.
Well, and I feel bad for the umpires here because they're kind of thrown in the middle to be like judge, jury, and executioner for a thing that they probably don't really totally understand. And, if a manager, I think there's supposed to be penalties for managers that ask for frivolous checks, but I don't know.
That's actually not true. There's nothing. And that's one thing Clayton Kershaw actually brought up after he saw the Scherzer incident. He said, they should lose a replay challenge or something like that. In the event that they call for a check and it's not there, because it could be used as a tool, to throw off a pitcher like this. I know when I was ever in a rhythm, in the little that I played, if I was ever in a rhythm, the absolute worst thing that you could have happen to you is, oh, somebody goes and calls timeout. Oh, there's a beach ball on the field, something ridiculous. There's a pigeon walking around home plate. They're trying to shoo him away. Just like any little disruption is the worst thing on earth, because you are going about your business, doing what you're meant to do. You're standing there. You're just, when you feel good, when you're in a rhythm, anything that can be done to disrupt that is the worst thing on earth to you as a pitcher.
And that's why you see hitters do stuff like this a lot. They step out of the box, they fix their gloves, they take a couple swings to throw off the timing of pitchers and stuff. Yeah, I mean, granted, I will say it does sound a little like pitchers are finicky, but they are finicky. And I mean, this is kind of how starting pitchers in particular are, right? They have their routine. You hear a bunch of the time pitchers you hear about a pitcher's routine, right? That's why starting pitchers hate rain delays, because it disrupts their entire routine and they have to wait a half hour or some unspecified, unsure time to start the game, right? So pitchers will sometimes have a 4 or 6 hour routine before their scheduled start. So that just goes to show how particular starting pitchers are with a lot of different little things, and how sensitive they are and reactive they are, and why something like being checked can be so disruptive for starting pitchers, or just pitchers in general. So no, that's absolutely true. My main thing about the whole thing, I don't like how it occurred. Like Eli said, I think last podcast, how it occurred mid-season, how it wasn't like this totally caught pitchers off guard. It totally caught the league off guard. It's not like they had an off season to prepare and kind of get mentally prepared for this. Pitchers are adjusting on the fly to this. So that's my main thing. And then the crackdown, I feel like, is a little excessive. Getting checked 2 times a game, every single pitcher. I get they're trying to crack down and they're trying to eliminate it, but I feel like, it could be done in a different way. So,
well, and back to what you
know.
were saying about pitchers being kind of a little bit eccentric and superstitious,
Hey.
they are they are that way. And Max Scherzer is like the most extreme version of that type of a person. So I think it was just like a perfect combination for a weird incident where Max Scherzer started to get undressed on the baseball field. And, we want to try to avoid that typically in baseball games.
Sergio Romo kind of did it. He actually went a little further and dropped his pants a little bit more as he was walking off the field. It's crazy.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I think it'll this is all back to, it shouldn't have been done in the middle of the season. They could have workshopped some of this stuff and they didn't do that. So what else is new? Rob Manfred doesn't really know what he's doing. So
yeah. One other thing, Scherzer actually in the post-game interview, they were asking him about all this, and he actually mentioned that he did lose track of a fastball and it ended up going about 95 up towards Alec Boehm's head. And, that's another thing that all pitchers are dealing with. I should look up some like hit by pitch numbers and such throughout the league, but it's undeniable that pitchers are losing track of more pitches than they were when they were able to use some substances to get a grip.
Absolutely. Yeah. June 21st, like pre and post June 21st will be an interesting like split date to kind of look at going forward. All right, let's talk MLB draft. We're about 2.5 weeks, maybe actually closer to 2 weeks away from the MLB draft as we record. There's been a new round of mock drafts that have come out, and only 2 of them agree on who the Orioles are taking with the 5th overall pick. So I'll run through them real quick. Fangraphs had a mock draft that has the Orioles taking Henry Davis, the catcher out of Louisville. Jonathan Mayo at MLB Pipeline has them taking Jordan Lawler, shortstop from Jesuit Prep in Dallas, Texas. ESPN's Kylie McDaniel has them taking Khalil Watson, a shortstop from Wake Forest High School in North Carolina. MLB Pipeline's Jim Callis has them taking Henry Davis from Louisville. And Keith Law at The Athletic has them taking Colton Cowser, the center fielder from Sam Houston State. A couple of the names that have been connected to the Orioles, in sort of a anecdotal sense, is Sal Frelick from Boston College, Brady House from a Georgia high school, and Harry Ford, a catcher from a Georgia high school. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the various picks here or who your favorite in the clubhouse kind of is. The talk around the Orioles continues to be that they are focused on a position player and they are focused on trying to get an underslot deal to save up for future picks. So Jesse, maybe I'll go to you. We've kind of talked about this, but the talk continues to be, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, the Orioles are going to go under slot. I know you weren't a super big fan of that a couple of weeks ago. Are you feeling any differently now that some of these names are being attached to the Orioles?
No, I'm still feeling the same way about going under slot. No, I did see Elias talk, and he said they're going to pick the best player, and basically I think was trying to say finances or whatever wouldn't be a consideration for the first pick. Who knows? He'll yeah, I mean, who knows whether that's true or not true. But yeah, I want them to try to get the best player. I think that for the Orioles perspective, in terms of timing, the only thing I might say is, sure, a high school player would, of course, high school players, if they work out, are going to help the Orioles long term and stuff. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea for the Orioles to try to get another college guy who is going to come up around the same time where we have these other prospects. he'll be a little behind guys like Adley, of course, and he'll be behind DL Hall and everyone, but they won't be that far behind. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Orioles pick somebody out of college, but I want them overall to pick the best player that they can. And as I was saying a couple episodes ago, the first pick overall is the best opportunity you have to draft a major leaguer. So I think that should be the priority.
Okay, fair enough. Eli, I think this is the first time we'll get a chance to hear from you in a little while on the MLB draft. What are your thoughts on the Orioles underslot strategy that they're supposedly entering the draft with?
Yeah, so the draft is kind of an interesting thing. And, there are a couple different ways to look at it. So, I guess, I don't know. I don't know how much you guys went into it. Admittedly, I didn't listen to the episode I wasn't on. But so,
okay.
the way that the MLB draft is set up is each pick is allotted a certain value. And so when we talk about underslot, we're saying take somebody who will sign a deal for sign a deal at a value lower than their slot, than that pick is worth. And so when you are looking at this situation, we've got a bunch of people who are kind of considered like all top 10 talents, really like the top 7 in all of these different draft boards are going in all sorts of different orders. We're tied to Henry Davis in 2 of these mock drafts right here. The Athletics' Keith Law has Henry Davis as the number 1 pick. So, there's no really consensus order that these guys are going to go in. And when that is the case, I think it's a pretty valid argument that you take the one who will enable you to shell out later in the draft, to go and get a high school prospect that you need to pay him $1.5 million in order to pry him away because, Vanderbilt wants him to come and pitch for them. That's an argument that could be made. And so to me, like, what really appeals to me is this dude, Henry Davis. He's a switch hitter. He hits the ball incredibly well. People talk about him as the best bat in the draft. Obviously, we have a catching prospect who's probably going to work out and be just fine, but they talk about him as somebody who can move to first base. He's got the arm for a corner outfield slot, and they say the bat's going to play. Like Jesse said, I think our timeline is more aligned with a college player. That being said, I think we have the talent in the farm system as to where we can start going and looking at more high school players and potentially, trying to hit on a lottery, and taking a higher ceiling, lower floor prospect that we'll have a little more time to work with. So all that said, I think the underslot, hype is something that people are loving to tie to the Orioles and might be blown out of proportion just because the Orioles do have one of these cold calculating front offices now. But if we do go under slot, particularly in a draft where the top of it is not totally set, where there is some maneuverability in terms of who is the consensus top pick, who's the consensus, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pick even, I think that it makes some sense to go under slot if you're going to do it.
Yeah. And, that's kind of the question too, is like under slot, how under slot? Because I think even like when Rutschman signed, he signed under slot by like $300K. Now he still signed
Right.
for like way more than the second overall pick did.
He set the record for the richest signing bonus ever at the time. So,
right.
Yeah.
Whereas Kjerstad last year, I think signed for about $2 million under, and he got less money than like the next 2 or 3 guys after him, so how under slot are we going here? That's sort of up in the air as well. Of the underslot options, like I've tried to look into some of these guys. If you guys need like scouting reports on these guys, do not listen to what I'm about to say. Go listen to like a Fangraphs podcast or MLB Pipelines podcast. Those guys know what they're talking about. But of the ones I've looked into that are under slot, so obviously Henry Davis is kind of like the premier college bat. I don't think he'd be really an under slot pick. He'd be like a value pick that you get he's going to sign for full slot there. But of the under slot picks, I think the Colton Cowser pick would be pretty interesting because they say he's a pretty advanced hitter, doesn't have a ton of pop, but is an above average fielder, above average runner, makes good contact, and he's a guy that could come along quickly. So I kind of like that pick, but it's probably not the best. It wouldn't be best player available, which, again, I would agree that's who you should go with if you're picking 5th overall. So we'll see. I'm sure more mock drafts will come out next week, and we'll try and touch on those real quick. I think it's just a nice thing to kind of keep front of mind while the Orioles are so terrible. As we're recording, they're currently down, I think, 7-0 to the Blue Jays, and it's just sort of another day of being an Oriole fan.
I was just going to say Vlad Guerrero just unloaded on a ball.
And Dean Kramer was removed after getting 1 out.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's not going great.
It was 1 out and 6 runs on only 2 hits.
It's not good. So he's walking.
It's not good.
Walking a lot of guys.
In fact, it's really, really bad.
Oh, but I'm seeing Diplo's performing at Camden Yards in July, guys. Diplo.
Yeah.
You going to go see
what? That makes it all better. You're right.
I know Jesse's going to go to that. Okay, so that's all we got for draft coverage. There's a silver lining of the week, which Eli, you picked out. Well, Eli's got one of these. Jesse's got the other one. So Eli, do you want to kind of go through your silver lining real quick?
Yeah, it's super simple. Grayson Rodriguez in his last start broke Adley Rutschman's glove with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. And that's just the kind of fun, good stuff that we need.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall are pretty active on social media, and that's kind of fun. Like, nobody on the Orioles right now is really that fun on social media. So maybe they'll keep it going and it'll be fun to follow them.
It'd be really nice.
Yeah. Jesse, what about your silver lining?
Yeah, so I actually kind of have 2. One, as I kind of mentioned earlier, Jorge Lopez went the deepest into a ball game. He's gone the entire season. He pitched 6 1/3. He got the loss, but he still pitched really well. And he got the loss because he gave up a hit, which the bullpen came in, allowed the run, but it was an infield hit. So it's kind of ticky-tack loss there, I got to say.
And he was facing Zach Greinke.
Right. And my other silver lining of the week, funny enough, both silver linings of the week came on days I went to the games. The other silver lining was that I have is Ryan Mountcastle hit 3 home runs in one game on the 19th against the Blue Jays. We still were not able to win that game. The Orioles hit 6 home runs that game and scored 7 runs in total. Which is kind of ridiculous, I gotta say. And the Orioles still lost, but Mountcastle did hit 3 bombs, which was pretty impressive. Mullins had 2 that game, and DJ Stewart had 1.
Mountcastle's bat has really come along.
Mountcastle, yeah,
he's been hitting really well.
Didn't Mullins hit 2 home runs in a game back-to-back days?
Back-to-back days, that's right.
So that's silver lining-ish, I think.
That definitely is.
It's pretty cool.
We have a few silver linings despite.
And Mullins is now in the top 9 of voting for outfielders in the AL. So he's going to hopefully get, I think the voting ends today as we're recording it. So this won't help. But if he gets to this next round of voting, everybody should go vote for him to be the starter because he deserves to be the American League starting center fielder.
Absolutely.
All right. What else we got? The other thing we want to do is, guess that Oriole. So last week's Guess That Oriole was longtime pitcher Mike Boddicker. And in case you guys are not familiar with Guess That Oriole, how it works is we give you 3 facts about a former or current Oriole, and then you play at home, guess who it is. And if you would like, you can reach out to us on social media or via email, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. I will give the first fact. This week's Oriole was drafted in the 58th round of the 1987 draft by the Kansas City Royals.
The second fact is that he was the 1995 All-Star Game MVP.
Number 3, he's currently working as an associate head coach at Florida International University.
Very interesting. So yeah, think about who it is and let us know what your thoughts are on who the Oriole of the week is. This coming week, the Orioles have got 4 games against Toronto, including the game we're currently watching or is happening while we're recording. Not thinking they're going to pull that one out. And then they've got 3 against Houston again. So it's kind of a repeat of last week, just away rather than at home. And last week didn't go particularly well. So I'm not thinking this week's going to go well either. I'll give my guess first because I feel like I always ask you guys first, and that's not fair. So I will say they will go 2-5. Who wants to go next?
I'm gonna say I'm taking the under on 0.5.
So none.
So I don't think we're gonna win a game.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Well, that's a bummer.
I'll split the difference, 1-6.
Oh wow. So I'm the optimist here at 2-5.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's hard time. It's hard times in Baltimore.
Let's just. I mean, is there any way any of us could imagine a scenario where we get more than 2 wins this week?
No,
I mean, let's be
not.
honest. Like, there's no situation where we. Yeah.
Well, the Orioles, so now it's gonna. They might lose. They might win fewer than the 47 games they won in 2018.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, it's very.
And that season was terrible. I mean,
it's so bad.
Although this season feels worse. I'll be honest. The pitching is worse this year than it was that year.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Although that year, we had the chance to compete in the division just with who was on our team, and so it will always be.
We expected this,
right?
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Well,
that's true.
We didn't expect this. We expected bad.
It's all about getting.
I think all of us had said we'd win 60 games, though.
Yeah, I think so. Well, people are already.
We had things to look.
People are already talking about 2022, the number 1 pick. I think Elijah Green, is that his name, is the number 1 pick people are expecting for next year. And
high school outfielder.
As bad as the Orioles have been, the Diamondbacks have been worse. And the Diamondbacks let Daniel Vogelbach score the other day after he'd broken his leg running around third base or something. It was pretty incredible.
So
I mean, I will say something positive should come out of all this suffering that we have to watch. I mean,
if we get a World Series in 2027, I guess it's all worth it.
Yeah.
I'd call that worth it.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. I mean, never seen the Orioles win a World Series. That'd be pretty awesome. And by 2027, I'll be 34 years old. So that'd be.
Oh God.
Yeah, you'd be 30, Eli. You'd be old too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow.
Well, now that we're thoroughly depressed, I guess let's end the show. You can follow the podcast on all the various social medias at The Warehouse Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. And you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else you get your auditory entertainment. Please give us a 5-star review if you are able to. That would be awesome. And I think that's it for the podcast. Jesse, where can people follow you online?
People can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Juggernaut8678. I should have said on Twitter and on Instagram.
Oh, you messed up the order.
No, that's how I always do it. And Eli was laughing over there.
I was laughing silently.
Found a way to switch it up.
I call it out every time we're here together, and so I was trying to let it slide gently past. But
you're doing good. You're doing great. You provide.
It's iconic. It's iconic.
It is.
Good. Cool.
Eli, how about you?
I am on Twitter at Elijah Ginsburg and on Instagram at Ginsy55.
Very good. And I am on Twitter and Instagram at _Ty Young. And go over to CamdenChat.com to read some Orioles blogs. It's a little lonely over there. People aren't stopping by as often because the Orioles are bad.
Yeah. Well, we have seen a downturn as the Orioles have gotten worse as well. It's like there's a correlation. People don't want to come and sit in misery as they drive on their way to work. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's tough out here for Orioles themed podcasts. It's all right. Well, let's get out of the show. All right. Well, let's wrap up the show there. Thank you all so much for checking out the Warehouse Podcast. Until next time, I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
Let's go O's. Oh, my voice cracked.